Okay, we'll try it again. This episode of the Offroad Podcast is sponsored by Warren Medical Gear Outfitters and Colby Valve.
Offroad Podcast, episode 376, Overlanding in Iceland.
Tonight, Aaron cuts some metal, Jeremy is flying away, and Ben has a plan. Not a good plan, but a plan.
Welcome to the Offroad Podcast, a podcast about everything off-road. We cover the news, review products, and interview people in the off-road industry. Your hosts tonight are Aaron, and my name is Ben, and welcome to the show. And joining us tonight is Dan and Tony from Northwest Overland.
It's good to be here.
I had too much fun with that one.
Glad to
Yes,
have
you
you.
did.
The Weekend Review is brought to you by Medical Gear Outfitters. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting to have a casualty on the trail? Check out medicalgearoutfitters.com to get straightened out. Medical Gear Outfitters has everything you need, whether you're going out for the day or traveling on a year-long expedition. Head over there to get off-road specific kits that meet all of your needs. And while you're there, make sure you use Offroad Podcast for 10% off.
All right. So, Ben, time for the weekly question. Did you use your first aid kit at all?
I did not actually, surprisingly enough, I did not get hurt. I came close, but no cigar.
Good. Let's see here. Well, I didn't use one either, so let's jump into what we've been up to. I missed a show last week because I was under the weather, and I'm still like head coldy. It's a little congestion still happening. It happens every year when the kids go back to school. They bring all the diseases home. So
Fantastic.
yeah, but I'm sure my immune system will be amazing as an old person or something. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah. You'll get through the winter okay.
Yeah. Usually our family gets like 3 colds by Christmas, and then there's no more colds the rest of the year. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see here. So because I was sick, I didn't do anything last week, but or I should say the previous week, this last week though, I got to work on my shop a little more. I can't remember if I mentioned that I made my pole barn shop too tall on the air for everybody to know about or not, but I made it taller than what my metal was cut to. And so now I'm going to be putting in the clear plastic around the top of my shop. So I had to cut all of my metal that goes for the walls down to a certain height so it matches at a girder height. So I spent the weekend cutting metal, and then I started installing some of that metal. So that's what I've been up to. I also moved my Nissan Frontier into the shop so that I can start tearing apart the front end for the Titan brake swap on it. So
Nice.
not a whole lot going on. I'm inundated with school. This week alone, I've put in about 10 hours of homework for school, not including whatever else I got to do for my electrical school. And next week is going to be even crazier. So Eric suggests getting a metal stretcher. There are metal stretchers, actually, Eric. They call it an English wheel. You should know that. You're English. Ooh, yeah. So, but yeah, that'd be a lot of work trying to stretch all that metal out. It'd go from 18 gauge to probably like 30 gauge or something. It'd be really thin. You could probably poke your finger through it. So,
What's it for?
it's just the siding on my pole barn.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's like a 1.5 feet short. So it would take a lot of stretching to get that metal to stretch that next 1.5 feet.
Yes, it would.
How about you, Ben? Have you been up to anything the past week?
Well, so much no good that you would probably sigh at me. So last week I mentioned that my wife was looking at trailers again.
I heard.
Yes.
You guys can't make up your mind on what you want. You want one of everything.
Yes.
Last time we talked, you guys wanted a full-size travel trailer, kind of like what I have.
Yep. So I'm a gypsy now.
Mhm.
I've got another trailer now.
Nice.
Oh, you bought one?
We bought one. So I found a Rockwood. It's a 1903 ESP. So
Oh yeah, the old 1903 ESP model.
it's it's nice. The only problem is the older gentleman that owned it. He was avid what do they call it? Gold panner, and
Okay.
he put it away wet, and so on
Mm,
the left hand side there was some mold, and I have
nice.
dispatched all of that mold, and I got it for about half price because of that.
Mm,
That's good. So now you have 3 trailers.
I have 3 trailers now, so I'm a gypsy.
Yeah.
wow.
Mhm.
And then in the process of doing all that, if StreamYard will let me, oh no, I didn't upload it yet. I've got Aaron, could you upload that picture? Or never mind. I'll do it if it won't. I use no, I'll talk about it later with the news. My son
Okay.
from today. But yeah, I've just been cleaning it. That's been about it. But it tows nicer than my teardrop does behind the Forerunner, so that's pretty awesome.
That's interesting. I wonder if it's wider or something that
It's narrower than the teardrop.
Huh.
It's just kind of I'm trying to think of what's the right word here. It's got trailer brakes, so I think that
Yeah.
helps. And I think because of the axle, it's not a Dexter axle, it's a leaf sprung axle. It just
Mhm.
tows nicer. It doesn't bounce around as much. So
Facebook user wants to know if it's going to make it to King of Hammers.
uh, yeah, if I get going to King of the Hammers, it would probably get towed with. We'll see. But
Did you guys talk about going to the King of Hammers when you were in Christmas Valley last weekend?
we did, and another adventure got brought up that's possibly in the planning that involves Baja. Whether or not that'll happen, we'll see.
I don't know if another country is going to let you into their country, Ben.
I'm good for revenue. I'm good for revenue.
Like by the police?
Yeah.
Lots of different reasons. Police,
Hospitals.
hospitals, towing companies. I mean, where does it stop?
Tony, just feel free to jump in on the Ben bashing. That's half of what we do on the
Oh,
show.
Lord.
So yeah, just jump right in. Just let it fly.
Man, I don't know what is with my StreamYard. All of a sudden, it's just lagging bad. So yeah, that's been about it for me. I got the trailer. I've just been cleaning it. I finally finished cleaning it today to a point where I'm happy with how clean it
Good.
is. I was like OCD about the amount of cleaning I've been doing on it, to the point where I'm like, all right, can I get this tiny little spot out? After this whole wall was like black, it's like, can I get this tiny little spot out? I'm like, just step back. Now I've got I just got my waterproofer in. I'm gonna re-waterproof. I washed the ends, and I'm gonna re-waterproof them just in case to ensure good things.
Good
So,
things.
So yeah.
How about you, Tony? Have you done anything off-road related in the past week?
I've got a couple trips coming up. I'm prepping right now. I've got Dan and I did a White Rim road trip back in May, and I had my Chevy Colorado that was carrying the who was it?
Bush Company?
The Bush Company's rooftop tent. And after about 15 months, the weight of the tent just collapsed the roof rack that was on it. So it's been sitting down in the tent in Moab since May. So on Friday, I'll drive back down to Moab. New roof, new load bars and everything else and all. And reattach the tent. I'll reposition the vehicle down to San Diego, fly back up to Seattle. I have a Land Rover Defender 90. I'll drive that back down to San Diego. And then I'm going to run the Colorado with the Bush Company tent all the way down to Cabo. I'll fly back up and get the Defender in time to make it to the Baja 1000. And then I'm going to spend the winter down on the Baja running back and forth for 4 months.
Oh, awesome. My mom's husband is a retired dentist, and he had an old Ford pickup truck and a camper, and he would go down for 2 months at a time and just camp in his camper and fish. And he had a boat and stuff with him too, a little like 12-foot aluminum boat. So he'd store it at a friend's house. And then when that friend sold his property, he had to bring all of it back up here to Oregon. And so I flew down and helped him. He sold his truck and camper. He drove his Nissan Xterra down there, and we towed the boat back. And it was a fun adventure, towing back. We didn't go all the way to Cabo. We were at Loretta, I believe is the name of the town. So we were 2/3 or 3/4 of the way down Baja. So
that's beautiful.
Great trip.
The whole Loretto side's amazing on the Sea of Cortez for sure.
Yeah, and there the very first day we were there, we went I should say the first full day we were there, we went to some cave paintings that just like your body just tingles when you're in something like that. So yeah.
That's right.
So cool.
Super rad.
Yeah. How about you, Dan? Have you done anything off-road related in the last week or so? Or
well, still playing catch up from Iceland. There's a lot going on at Vision Next, getting ready for SEMA. So there's all kinds of big projects happening there. I don't know if you guys knew, but Vision X got acquired by an Australian firm last December. So we're going through a little bit of an acquisition change right now, which it's all good. The Aussies they're fun to play. You know, those guys are the define true off-roading, man. They're hardcore.
when is SEMA?
First week of November. So just in
so you got a month away. Yeah.
So the Aussies came in and they pumped some life into our the company, and they just spent $350,000 on a gigantic display booth that's going to have a new Bronco in it with completely decked out and all vision lighting, and it's going to be really awesome. And at the same time, we're going through this that they call so the parent company is called GUD Holdings, and they each year they put out and a request for people to make submissions for product innovation, and their big thing is safety implementation. And so this past year we developed this LED cockpit map light for the airline industry, and we implemented a 6S safety system into the company. So both my projects made the finalist. So I have to put two 90-second videos together. And if we win, which I know we're going to win, then we'll be making a trip to Melbourne here next month. So, But off-road related, I'm still sorting the Jeep out from previous trips. Was supposed to be heading down to Alvord this weekend, but my new tent has been held up in customs. So I'm still sort of waiting on that. Apparently it got delivered. The container got delivered to Denver on Wednesday of last week, and it only needs to make its way up to Boulder. And once it gets to Boulder, they can fly it out to me. But I'm just sort of like sweating bullets.
Do you need to borrow any sort of sleeping vessel if it doesn't work out?
I think I'm just gonna hold fast, because it's funny. All the guys that had signed up for the trip are all retired. Like, yeah, we can go whenever, And so I got a little bit of grace in that department. But this will probably be an experimental winter, like cold weather camp. I haven't done it in the past just because of logistics and a lot of other things. We're building out the Airbnb last year, and then prior 3 years we've just been hitting that hard. So that's all done and operational. So I'm finally going to have some bandwidth to try to get out this winter, which I'm excited about. So. Yeah.
It's been 2 years now, but I went to Nevada during COVID in early November. I hit the Black Rock Mountains, and I assume that the Alvord's going to be similar temperature wise, where it drops down in the 20s at night or so.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of that, one of my acquisitions is just trying out this new diesel heater. So we'll see how that
You,
see
are,
how
are you
that goes.
jumping on the bandwagon of the Chinese diesel heaters?
Well, this one isn't made in China. It's made in Taiwan, so it's a little bit closer to the U.S. If that's any sort of justification, then I'm just going to use it. But
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, but I was thinking about the 65 or the $165 Chinese diesel heater. They're a little bit quirky from what I've heard. I mean, they run good until they don't, and then you just have to start kind of futzing around with them. But I'm looking at this other one that is a little bit better quality, but we'll see how it goes. I haven't got it yet, but
Well,
I'm curious to hear, because I've got the same feelings that you do. Sounds like everybody loves them, but they break all the time, so much that there's like a support group on Facebook for them. So
yeah. And you could probably, I mean, they're simple enough that you could probably kludge some parts together and make it better than where it came from. But I don't have enough experience or an opinion on them yet, so I'm not going to try to bullshit our way through it. So yeah, other than that, Jeep's running great. I just turned 160,000 miles on it. It's still not burning oil, which is great. After, I don't know, after this past couple of years, I mean, we put a lot of trips on that bad boy, and I will say that I'm, coming from Land Rover world, this thing has been pretty darn solid, with the exception of the rear axle build that I had to do earlier this year, but that was definitely well worth it. Yeah.
Do you have a locker in it yet?
No, I didn't. Unfortunately, I didn't have the bandwidth to get the locker in it, but it's going to be super easy to just float out the G2s, and then I'm going to set one up myself, because I used to do that stuff in the Navy. So I just need to get a ring and pinion set, and then I'll set it up, and it'll probably be a project for this winter, I would suspect. So I should be ready to rock and roll. And then I need to rebuild the front end too, because it's pretty tired.
Yeah, might as well do them both at the same time.
Yep, 100%. And I'm looking at a Defender 130. That's just not, I shouldn't be doing this, but see if my company can buy it.
There you go.
Yep.
We also thank our sponsor, Patriot Patch.
Oh, sorry, Aaron.
I was just going to say, for safety, they're focusing on safety. It'd be super safe to buy that vehicle.
Right.
Yeah, you'll never leave the parking lot.
Yeah, nice one.
Or go too fast.
Yeah,
you never go too fast. Although there's claims that this particular vehicle can cruise comfortably at 70 miles an hour. So we'll see. That's downhill, of course, with the tailwind. Empty.
We also want to thank our sponsor, Patriot Patch. Head over to patriotpatch.co and check out their selection of great patches, shirts, cleaning mats, signs, and stickers. You can also join the Patch of the Month Club for $15 and receive a patch, matching sticker, and artist proof each month. I heard the reason why Jeremy wasn't on tonight is because he's upset because he still doesn't have his own patches.
Yeah. Well, if he'd show up, children's birthday parties as he's invited to a week ahead of time.
Did you get your Patch of the Month patch there, Ben?
I did get my Patch of the Month patch. I really did like that patch. I was like, oh, it's Bewitched. And then I don't know what to think of the AK one.
Well, that looks like a typical AK owner. Did you get the AK patch?
No, I did not.
I didn't either. I saw that, but didn't. I saw it somewhere else, but yeah. So pretty fun patch. I don't know if my wife will let me put it in the headliner of the truck though or not. She's a little too voluptuous, maybe. I don't know.
Rated R, rated PG-13.
Yeah, Yeah, PG-13. So
Don't want to
Yeah.
get that flow of yours going yet.
yeah.
And then also, we can't forget about our patches, the Lumen Locker and the Offroad Podcast patch. Those can be yours, easily shipped. $13 for you in the US and $10 for any additional patches you order. So if you order 2, it's 23. If you it only goes up by 10s after that. Or you can pick us up from me in person here in Washington State for $10 each. Just send us a message through PayPal or send us a message through any of our channels and we can set you up with a PayPal link. And oh yes, that Lumen Locker, it glows in the dark.
Sweet.
Dan knows all
can
about
pick-
those Lumen Lockers.
You can
Yeah,
pick them up from me down here in Oregon too if you're outside of the Portland area. You can get one from me too.
Yeah, not in Portland. He does not want to get jumped.
Have tire troubles ever left you deflated? Colby Valve has got you covered. Ever have a valve stem leak? Colby Valve makes reusable and easily replaceable valve stems that don't require you to remove your tire from the wheel. They work with your off-road rig, ATV, side-by-side, commuter vehicle, or even your tractor. Never be left stranded again because of a busted valve stem. They also have a tire repair kit for those punctures that keep you away from doing your favorite thing, wheeling. Make sure to check out colbyvalve.com or ask for them at your local off-road products store.
So I decided I am a scientist and I did scientist things because, those little weed dispense or the where they the
A weed sprayer, Ben.
yeah,
it sounds like you're talking about a dispensary. No, a
That's
weed
what I was
sprayer.
thinking too.
no. So I took my weed sprayer and I added a Colby valve to it because my arms were getting tired filling that thing up with cleaning solution for my canvas. So I was like, I are a scientist and I are gonna fix this problem. And so I pulled out a Colby valve, drilled a half-inch hole, and popped a Colby valve in there, and boom, more power.
Yeah. You shared that picture without comment, and I'm like, I knew exactly what it was and what you're doing with it, and that's clever. Of course, you can go out and buy some that have Schrader valves on them, or you can buy like a cordless battery powered one. But when you've got all the stuff laying around, why not just science it up yourself?
Yep, because I are a scientist.
Yeah,
I
you
are.
are. Do you guys, Tony or Dan, have you guys ever seen the Colby valve emergency tire valve guys?
I fell in love with those about 2 years ago, and the issue that I have is that nobody will put them in because they have the TPMS. So if you guys have a solution for that, I mean,
There
I'm all
isn't.
ears.
So
Yeah,
here's the solution: is you just debead your tire and cut that valve out, and then you pop that Colby valve in yourself, and there you go. And
Well, you'd have to reach inside the tire and pull that TPMS unit from the inside. Usually it's got a metal valve stem as well. So
yeah, that is true. So what you can do is what I had to do with my beadlocks is I just took my tires over and said, hey, this is an off-road vehicle. And then they mounted and balanced the tires. So you could be like, hey, this is going on an off-road vehicle. I want the valves out, the TPMS out. That way you don't have a TPMS sensor bouncing around on the inside if you cut it.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's probably some savvy way to decommission the TPMS parameter in the ECU or whatever.
Yeah, with
some vehicles
dog.
Yeah, some vehicles can, some can't, like my Nissan can't. I have heard of people saying that they build a pressure vessel and throw all of their TPMS sensors in that pressure vessel and then add a Schrader valve to it and pressurize it. And then they just leave that Tupperware or whatever it's in floating around for years.
So, or you just be like me and ignore the light that's flashing for the last
you could just
4
ignore
years.
The light too. Put some electrical tape over it.
Yeah, I ignore it anyway, so whatever. So used to it.
I mean, I'm driving off the road.
when you air down, and I mean, it just sits there and he screams at you, and it's like, all right, calm
Yeah.
down. We've done this before.
I know. I know the drill.
Yep.
Yep. Well, our first news story here, it's I laugh because the Hyundai Sonata Cruise, that's the truck Ute style one. It got some upgrades.
Let's start that sentence over. It's a Hyundai Santa Cruz, not a Sonata Cruise.
Sonata Cruise. Well, that's about how I feel about it. I can't even speak about it properly. I don't know. I was just highly disappointed in it. Here, let me share a picture because everyone's like, "Oh, off-road upgrades." I'm like, "Oh, cool. Let's check those out." And then it's like disappointing off-road upgrades. Like, "Oh, I've got tinfoil skid plates." So that's what it is. Looks cool, right? What did they do? Skid plates and some tires. And it's got a full-size spare and a roof rack.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of looks clever. It looks clever, but I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to show off how they can just do things in mostly stock form. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'm sorry, but if you're gonna do off-roady things, saying that you're doing it is, here's tires and skid plates. There you go. It's like this is a race, you might want, like, I don't know.
It's a rally. It's a rally, not a race. It's a rally.
Yeah, I bet that Hyundai probably procured a few WRX SCIs and tried to mimic some of the undercarriage to make it look like it was an roll off the assembly line vehicle, and then they just say, "Oh, we're just going to throw this rally package on it." But I don't think anybody trusts it yet because it just hasn't been proven, right?
Yeah. I mean, give it beefier suspension, give it longer suspension, make it taller. So yeah. Other than that, it's been a slow news week. There was a couple stories, but nothing that I was like, yeah. So I figured, we haven't done this lately, is talking about some events that are going on and coming up. So we've got the Rebel Rally. Obviously, we just mentioned that. Mercedes is at that, so we'll probably cover it. Lilienthal, the Ultimate Off-Road Adventure. Andy's on that currently. So he might talk about that. Who knows? Toyo Tires Trail Pass 2022. The last one I think was in 19. And it was in Oregon. This one was in California. Sounded interesting. Overland Expo East just happened. This last weekend. And then Rendezvous in the Ozarks. Did I say that right?
Rendezvous.
Oh, see, there we go. Ben can't say words.
I was wondering how you spelled that even.
Rendezvous.
That's how it was spelled in the thing I found mentioning some
events. That's good. You got the spelling right. You just couldn't pronounce it.
No, me no spell good or talk good.
I thought you were a scientist. Come on.
We are scientists. I are. SEMA is coming up here at the end of the month. And then there's an event I might be at, is the Off-Road Toy Outfitters. It's a friend of mine, Phil. He runs it. He's doing a run on the 29th of October. I think I will be there. Not 100%.
Where's that one at?
That's going to be down. We're going to be running around in the Gifford Pinchot.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
He's doing like a more overlandy style event. And he's got some raffles and stuff. And to help pay with the raffles, to get your ticket into the event is like buying a shirt or something like that. So I think it's a pretty cool idea. So I might go check it out. I just got to clear it with the governor, if she'll let me out. Yeah. And there's Phil in the comments. So yeah, that's those are some events coming up. If you've got an event you want us to talk about or what's going on, maybe we can find someone who's there if we're not there, because I mean, I'm not going to SEMA this year, but I've got lots of friends they might be, so we'll see. And now it's time for that famous.
Go prepared with Warren Industries. They produced the first recreational winch in 1959 and lead the industry with their dedication to quality and reliability. When you dig yourself in deep, make sure you have the right tools to get yourself out. Get Warren equipped and go where others can't. Now, let's get ready for adventure and head into our main topic.
Aaron, you know what would make that video even that much better? Is me winching Pete stuck in his tundra on top of that dune.
I heard that Pete didn't get stuck at all. That's what Coy told me, is that Pete was bragging that he didn't get stuck at all.
He probably didn't need to get winched, but I winched him. He didn't even have a chance. I thought he was going to get stuck right there because of the angle of the dune. So I had turned around already. I had my winched clutch off. And as soon as I saw he was like somewhat stuck, I ran out over with my winch. I hooked it on and I ran back. He didn't even have a chance to respond. So yeah, that's good friends for you.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So he may
That
or
is
may not
hilarious.
have needed to be winched, but I winched him till he needed to be winched. So he had no choice.
I see. So you got him more stuck, or
I winched him sideways at an angle because of where we were at. It was just better to winch at that angle. So yeah, I got him more stuck. So he needed to be winched out, and I helped him.
okay?
What a good friend.
Yeah, Ben is a good friend. He's good for stuff like that.
I'm there to help you. Just quit resisting. Oh, we lost Tony there. Hopefully he'll be back here in a second. There he is.
He's coming back.
There he is. And then
hey Tony, are you in Tacoma, or are you down in San Antonio?
I'm in Texas. I'll be back in Tacoma on Wednesday.
Okay, gotcha. So you're in Central Time, right?
Yes.
All right.
it's getting
So
past his bedtime. We better hurry up.
he's an early riser, so
All right. Well, let's start this off with the Fast 5 facts. Dan, you weren't here the last time. The last time you were on, we didn't have the Fast 5 facts. And Tony, first time on the show, so this will be great for you too. This helps our listeners learn a little bit about you. And, we'll start the first one off with new or old vehicle.
new or old vehicle, as in
What you driving? What do you want to drive?
What do you prefer?
Old, or yes, definitely, because they're less dependent on electronic minutia. So, having started my off-roading career with a 1968 Series 288 Land Rover, that's about as Spartan as you can get. So I would say that my JK is probably the most advanced off-road vehicle I have ever owned.
Tony?
I have a 91 Defender 90 that, given that of my three vehicles, I have the 90, I have a Defender 110, and I have a 2020 Chevy Colorado. I'll drive that Defender 90 all day, every day. And while she breaks frequently, but
yes, she does.
I've driven her from Sacramento to Tacoma, 700 miles without a clutch. Back in May, she decided she wanted to lose 20 pounds of ugly fat, so she threw off her rear prop shaft. I was still able to drive it 400 miles home, no codes, none of that. So, yeah, I'll take old every day.
All right. Summer or winter camping?
Oh, that's easy for me. You guys know me. I'm a Tinkerbell. I like me some summer.
Yeah. How about you, Tony?
I'll take
prefer
winter,
summer or winter?
primarily because there's less people. Most people aren't experienced at it, so the more open space I can have, the better.
That's how I feel too.
Awesome.
Rock, sand, snow, or mud?
Sand for me. I dig some sand, and there's a big story behind that too, but nothing that involved any trauma. Well, I guess there was a little bit of trauma, but I lived to tell the tale. But yeah, sand for me for sure. It's after putting a sand recovery class together last year, I actually taught myself a few things by doing some research, which was really cool on the different types of sand there is. But yeah, sand, love it.
Tony?
I'm a rock fan. Southern Utah, northern Arizona. I love being out in the desert and the rock. Not necessarily a rock crawler, but just, like out in remote places. I worry every year at the end of the year. I've got so much Utah inside my vehicles that they're going to assess me property taxes. But so far to this point, they haven't done it yet. But yeah, I'll take the rock every day.
Nice.
All right. I've got a good guess for this. And favorite vehicle brand?
Ooh. Does Ferrari count? No. I'll always have a Land Rover in my blood. In fact, if I get this 130 high cap pickup, then that will probably satisfy the gods. But I do love my Jeep, man. I'm not a Jeep guy, but man, it really has treated me really well in the past almost 5 years I've owned it. So I know it's a wishy-washy answer. That's what you get.
And then favorite? Oh, Tony, sorry.
That's going to be difficult.
Mine is old. It's going to be my 91 Defender 90. Her name's Stella. She's my Italian mistress. Blackmails me for $3,000 or $4,000 every month. But yeah, I've got a Colorado that's ultra reliable, never broke anything else and all, but still, given the opportunity, I'll be in the Defender over the Colorado.
Yeah.
You said your Defender is Italian? How does that work?
She spent her first 25 years. She spent her first 25 years on a farm in Italy, and then in 2016, a company out of Austin, Texas, brought her over, and I bought her in the fall of 2017.
All right, I'll let that slide then.
And favorite tire brand?
Oh yeah, I've always been very partial to BFG. It's one of those things where it hasn't treated me wrong. I would say that the 37s that were on the Jeep when I bought it, which were brand new, I didn't get the kind of life out of them that I expected. But then again, I don't think I did a very good job maintaining rotation. So that's probably on me. But I would say
Coopers, right?
What's that?
Those were Coopers, right?
No, those were KM2s.
Okay.
Yeah. And it drove great until it didn't. And they just got cupped really bad and whatever. So But I would say in all my Rovers for the past 25 years, it's all been BFGs. So that's
speaking of Rovers. Rick said that Tony's Rover was so slow it took 25 years to get here.
Actually, that little thing goes.
It doesn't have
fast.
a speedometer; it has a calendar.
Exactly. Yep.
Every 3 years, it takes a day off. But
I had her out on the Bonneville Flats a couple of summers ago, and they were doing some time trials out there. So I rolled up and I asked the guy if they would time me. And mind you, I was full of kits, so it's only Defender 90, but the back end was just loaded with stuff. So we ran the quarter mile, and I wanted to see if I could get to 60 miles an hour. And I made 3 tries, and each time they backed me up 150 yards, and I never got to 60 in the quarter mile. And then finally, the guy radioed his wife and said, "Put the clock down and get a calendar," because that's how slow I was.
Well, Tony, do you have a favorite tire?
It would be, it wasn't a conscious choice. When I got the Defender, they had the Firestone Destinations on there. And just knowing the Firestone brand from the 70s and 80s, it had never been a brand I picked. But doing a 5-tire rotation, I got 67,000 miles out of a tire that was supposed to go 50. And I never had an uneven tire wear on any of them. So I can't fault them. And then on the Colorado, I'm running the KO2s and love those. But I can tell you, even doing a 5-tire rotation on those, I don't think I'm going to get 70,000 miles out of them. I think I'll be lucky to get 60 out of them.
Mm.
So right now, I'd say just on, my personal experiences, the Firestones did much better than I ever thought they would, because I'd have never picked them on my own.
Yeah. Same with the Explorer owners.
I remember those days. Well, I think it's time we talk about this trip, because you guys, you went far, very far.
Yes, we did.
Well, why don't we start with just a general outline of obviously our show is called Overlanding in Iceland. So people know you were in Iceland, but can you give us an idea of a route that you took, where at in Iceland? If you can't pronounce the names, just make up the names and people will still believe you.
Well, yeah. To sort of preface all of this, last year I texted Tony. He was in Iceland with his brother, and I forget what the context was, but I said, "Hey, dude, I want to talk to you about a little bit about this." And so he sends me back a text saying, "You'll have to forgive me. I'm kind of predisposed at the moment." And he starts streaming this live video of him standing in front of this volcano that's erupting. And I'm like, "Holy shit, is that really happening right now?" And he goes, "It's really happening right now." And so I was just like blown away. So I'm like, "We got to go next year." So he actually inspired me to put this together. Now, it was quite the planning process, but and we could go deep into it. But I started planning this trip a year ago, last July, and I'm glad I did, because there's a lot of logistical details that we had to mess with, and because we brought 30 people, it was a huge group of folks, and all of them were solid. And we had Dirt Lifestyle Nate with us. We had a couple other YouTube guys that just came on board, and Tony and his brother Jerry came along with, and some people that I never met before, some people I've known for years, and I think we had a really good Escape Overland's commenting now. Brady, he was one of our driving partners. He was a great partner. His first time driving a Defender, and a long time since he's drove a 5-speed, so a little bit of baptism of fire for him. But we used a 4-wheel drive rental service with completely outfitted Super Defenders is what they call them. They're on 48-inch tires. They're meant for floating on the snow during the wintertime. But they are really fun to drive in the dirt, sand, and mud out there and across the all the rivers that we forded, which was probably, I would say, the whole trip we probably went across about 30 different rivers, streams, whatever, in the 3 days that we were out there. I don't know how much backstory you want. If we can dive right into the guts of it, you just let me know, but I can talk forever about the planning part of it.
We'll just keep asking questions and answer those questions. And if at the end we've missed anything, we'll ask some more.
Sure.
Well, as far as wanting to drive Iceland, so my first trip to Iceland was 2012. And on the very first trip that we took, we saw 8 Toyota Hiluxes on the 40-inch tires heading out to drive the lava fields and the tundra. And from the first time I saw that, I said, I want to do that one day. And I had been back to Iceland 2 times afterwards, but we just never got to get it in the schedule. So May of last year, I went to see the volcano. And that's where I sent Dan the video. And I said, we got to come back here, because we had to walk about 6 miles from the parking area to get to the volcano. And I walked by a couple of the super Land Cruisers that Search and Rescue uses out there on the 40-inch tires and stuff. And then saw a couple of Super Defenders in town. And so, by that time, between 2012 and last year, I'd gone from not owning anything off-road to owning a Defender in the Colorado and having some familiarity with driving off-road and stuff. So yeah, I threw that at Dan. I was shocked at how quickly he jumped on it though, because he was like an instant yes. And I was super happy. He's right there. As long as he makes it happen, I'm good. I can sometimes be a little whiny moany, but when you're in a group thing like that, I just kept telling myself I'm one of 30. I'm one of 30. It's not all about me. So we got to go out and see some phenomenal eye candy. It's amazing what Mother Nature's capable of. And yeah, would strongly encourage anybody that had the desire to go do it to get out there into those remote places, because it's unbelievable what you'll see. You know, the pictures don't do it justice. You take the pictures of it and people are going to challenge your camera. Were the colors really that vibrant? You know, was there something wrong with your? No, that's exactly what you were seeing and stuff like that. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Did it really look like Jurassic Park, or did you just have air flying through it? So
there was numerous times when we said, "Cue the dinosaurs. Where are they at?" You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they should be there. Yeah.
That happened.
The visual contrast. I think Dan had a picture earlier. It was on our first day out. We're driving underneath the power lines, and if you look left and right, and your windows aren't down, and it looks like you're in the desert. But that so-called desert runs right up to the big glacier. So it was just amazing at the contrast. Where else in the world are you going to see a desert and glacier come together? Yeah. But if you look left of that picture, that's what we see. If there's a big glacier out there, that's what we're driving towards. And I just like, where else are you going to go in the world and see that contrast?
It's interesting too, that picture, you know, it's like, hey, it's a power line road, you know, we all have those, right? But how we got onto this road was through one of the big nature parks that were so there's a big fissure that runs north and south in Iceland and separates the Eurasian tectonic plate and the North American tectonic plate. And so that crack runs all the way north and south through Iceland. And so we stopped there for just a quick photo op, and then we immediately got onto this 2-track road, and we probably did about 30 miles across this like Icelandic desert to the base of this glacier, and it was just phenomenal. This picture here that you're seeing, this was our second day out. This is the day that we circumnavigated this particular ice cap, and you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of we had to do a bunch of backtracking where you see the vehicle arrow in the red. We actually we could literally hop across the river right above where that arrow is and go go clockwise around the ice cap. But unfortunately, all the bridges are washed out from flooding. So we had to drive about 10, 15 miles back, cross the river where there's a kind of a janky bridge, and then start backtracking back towards where the nav arrow is. And then that whole loop probably took us about 10 hours. It was a long day, but man, it was just, the videos that you're going to see here shortly will give you a reason why it was not so bad after all.
So how hard was it? How hard was it to coordinate a large group of people?
You know, I would say that this particular trip, it had its challenges for sure. But because I'm so used to putting together a group 10 to 15 max people, I'm like, well, if I could just copy and paste that idea and we'll just make accommodations. Now, of course, this is my first international trip, and I had to sort of let go of some things. And one of the things I had to let go of was, I can't get you there. You got to show up on this day where the bus shuttle is going to pick us up and take us to the vehicle depot. It's up to you if you want to spend a week prior to or a week after the trip, but we are leaving on Sunday morning and we're coming back on Tuesday night. So if you can be here, and we'll take it from there. So I was actually surprised with the response. Initially we had like five or eight people, and then word got out. This was probably in August, September. The trip was full by the end of September, and we weren't even leaving until the following September. So a year ahead of time, we already had a full group. Now I could have brought more people in, but I'm like, you know what, having 29 people is going to be pretty ambitious as it is. Not only that, only because we're kind of taxing the vehicle rental company and their resources as well. So we have to be cognizant of that. And so I capped it at 31, actually 30, but this guy wanted to bring his wife, which was fine because couples were great. We had 2 people fall out, 3 people fall out. And so it was still good. I mean, I basically said 50% deposit, and it's non-refundable because everybody's unit cost is going to be based on the number of people that are going on the trip. And nobody should have to like adjust their costs because somebody decided they don't want to go. They're just going to, I'm sorry, that's just, you have to sort of draw the line somewhere. Right. And everybody was fine with that. And I think it's a pretty decently priced trip, considering it involved or it included the vehicle rental for 3 days, included your accommodations for sleeping, and included all of your food. So for $1,300 per person, it was good. I mean, I think it was a good baseline. Getting everybody over there, no problem. Everybody just followed the rule of thumb and said, you just got to show up where you show up, and when you show up, and we'll take it from there. And I think Tony, you were there prior to me arriving, weren't you?
Yeah, I was there early, and initially when Dan was planning it, also he wanted to kind of do it midsummer, and I was very, much in his knickers about no, because of the things that people think they want to see when they go to Iceland. One of the ones is the Northern Lights. Midsummer, you're not going to see the Northern Lights. You got 22 hours of daylight. So one of the people's bucket list items was instantly out if you did that. The other one was me being a retired air traffic controller and knowing about people movement and stuff. You never want to travel during peak season. You're never going to get the best prices. And I don't know if you guys watched the news. You saw the baggage issues that was going nationwide, well, actually worldwide. Europe was having everything else. Now, we were fortunate, at least for Seattle. I'm not sure where everybody came, but at least Seattle and Portland, they had direct flights. So we didn't have to worry about a baggage issue. But if you were making any kind of connections, then you got in that kind of mix. And as we also saw, when we got out on the roads and driving around, it didn't really run across a bunch of other groups driving the same trails that we were. And that's primarily when you get to September, you're back to the seniors. And most of them don't drift 50 yards from the tour buses. So we didn't have to compete with them, that if we were there in midsummer, there's that many more people on the trails and everything else and stuff and all. So I was very glad that Dan, I think it took a couple of times because his dates shifted. I think he went June, August, and finally ended in September. But we got the Northern Lights. We had more than enough daylight. We never ever got shorted on daylight in a drive. All of our drives started and ended in daylight. And like Dan was saying, we had some 10 and 11-hour days of drive. So September is a perfect month if you're thinking about doing it, because you can get all those things and you'll still get the Northern Lights. A lot of the so-called bucket list items that people wanted to see when they do the trip, you get them all.
Hey, Rick, nobody's picking on you, buddy, even though you're an old guy.
I was going to say that Rick probably went in September because he's a senior.
follow the blue hair bus.
So did you guys have any problems with like language barriers? I mean, I've heard that, Iceland, they've got a pretty good English to Icelandic.
So as an Icelandic national, you start learning English in the 4th grade, and you take it all the way until you graduate from high school. So I would say that we never I personally never ran into any problem language barrier with the locals. Everybody was very clearly bilingual. I mean, and when I say clearly, I mean they spoke really good English. Now, a lot of the workforce there, they're not Icelandic. They come from Europe, and they all have a requirement to speak English, because that is, outside of Icelandic itself, is the national language, because it's such a tourist trap that, it's just kind of like going to Mexico. Wherever you go to Mexico where there's a tourist town, everybody speaks English because they know the gringo has a lot of money. But one thing I will say is that I know quite a few Norwegian folks, and some of my friends, and some aren't anymore anyway because they're grumpy. But some Norwegians are very cold and sort of not very friendly. I would say that the locals in Reykjavik, they call it East America because it technically is on the North American plate, and so they kind of want to get grandfathered into the North American way of doing things, which is kind of fun. Yeah, it was good. Tony, what was your experience?
To be clear on the language, they don't speak English because of the Americans. They speak English because of the proximity to England, not us. So it's not our language; it's the Queen's English that they're speaking.
Okay. Yeah. It's England, and and you've got U.S. and Canada that are kind of sandwiching Iceland together, and so it makes sense for them to, I would say our guides, they spoke really good English. They had a heavy accent, and sometimes it was hard to understand what they were saying over the radio, but we got the gist of it. It was everyone's like, what did he say?
It made their butt chewings when we got out of line. It made their butt chewings more comical. Just they heard them cursing at us with an accent and stuff and all. It was hard to be insulted by them.
Yeah.
All right, I got one more question, then we'll just start diving in these photos and videos. Did you guys have any troubles along the way? Vehicle, lodging, geographical, people?
The only vehicle issue we had was Nate Pickles, Dirt Lifestyle, Nate's Defender, lost the charge hose on his turbo diesel, and fortunately he's a diesel mechanic, so he was able to rectify that really quickly. But other than that, the Defenders ran great. Now, one thing that's different about the Defenders over there than in North America is that they're running the TD5 with the 5-cylinder turbo diesel, which is a little bit more upgraded, and you've got a 6-speed transmission, manual transmission. So they were really, really nice to drive, like super friendly, even on those 38s. Yeah, just super, super nice. Yeah. Tony,
as far as difficulties, you have to ask this question directly to Dan. From being one of the guests and not the organizer, I envisioned he would have a problem managing expectations, because he had 28 people with 28 different ideas of what the trip was going to be like. So you might have Dan address that.
Yeah. I went back and forth with our guide service, for months, and we finally nailed down the itinerary. I think it was like in May of this year. So imagine July through May trying to figure out where are we going to stay. Do we want to stay at a different place every night? Do we want to camp? Do you want to stay at what they call the volcano huts, which is a very crude dormitory out in the middle of nowhere that they helicoptered in all these supplies to build it. Now, it was comfortable for sure, but very, very remote. So we had one family. We had a mom and dad and a 6-year-old son. So I wound up putting them in a cottage next to the dormitory, so they had a little bit more privacy, because Junior wakes up at 3:00 in the morning, wants to start chit-chatting with mom and dad, and in the dorm the walls were very thin, so and they actually appreciated having that little bit of privacy, which it worked out really well for them, and I think for us too. So, and we had another couple that decided not to go to the the dorm, which is, again, the dorm is like a summer camp cabin. I mean, it's literally like 10 rooms in this very plywoody built structure. And then but they also had yurts down behind the main house. So some folks decided they wanted to shift over to that, which was great. So we had some opportunities and some choices. But as far as I had to sort of subdue everybody's eagerness to go do all these extracurricular things, because this wasn't the trip for that. This was strictly an off-road trip, and we're not going to go diving. We're not going to go pet whales. You can do that stuff before or afterwards, because we really have to maintain. Yeah, you really have to maintain the focus of what the pulse of the trip is. And so Eric's asking about saunas. There are saunas at the volcano huts for sure, but I don't know if it worked that well. I heard some bad stories about that. But everybody did their hot springs, their mineral springs, and everything ahead or behind the actual trips. Because I really brought it in and said, hey, listen, let's just focus on getting way out in the middle of nowhere and seeing Iceland's raw state. And that's exactly what we did. I think everybody dug it. After the trip, I sent out a survey to everybody to see, what their impression of the trip was, what they want to see change, or something different, or something added, something removed. And I got some really positive results from it. So we'll probably be doing another one in 2023 for sure. Yep. In fact, I had a waiting list that I had to politely tell those folks that they'll be on the 2023 train, because I can't go over 30 people. It's not very. The vehicles are great, and we have a guide and a lead and a sweeper, and radios are good. But we were spread out pretty far, and they only use VHF radios, and they're all kind of handhelds and mobiles. But they started losing connectivity. The guides, the guide in the front and the sweeper, they had to get on the cell phone and talk, because the radio just would not be really good over the horizon. So.
Yeah, that many vehicles, I can see it.
Yeah.
One other thing that Dan will speak to, which was what they actually did for us, was something they had never done before. So growing pains through that, like, how do you manage 28 people? And actually, I don't believe all the vehicles came from one tour operator. They had to go through a couple of different ones to be able to handle us that big as a group. So, if anybody else is considering doing their own thing, those are considerations, because, again, Dan had an out briefing with them, so you might ask him how that went.
Yeah. So the name of the company we use is ISAK, ISAK, and they just specialize in catered. You could rent a vehicle from them by yourself and just drive around Iceland for $500 a day. Or you could do what we did, and we split the vehicle up between 4 people. And so now the cost is only $125 a day, which is a lot more affordable. And everybody got an opportunity to drive across the rivers. And we just rotated people like every couple of hours, and it was great. But they were not used to an entourage of 30 people coming in. So I really had to sell them that we are not a bunch of tourists. We actually love doing this for a lifestyle. And so we had, to share with them videos and pictures of what we do on our website and everything. And they were like, okay, no problem. We got you. And they still had to err on the side of caution, because one of the things that we didn't realize before we got there was the vehicle rental company subcontracts out their guides to a guide service. So the guides, we have to actually pay for the guides' vehicles and their accommodations. And that was all also part of the inclusion of the costs. Yeah. So it started to add up. And then there was insurance for the vehicles as well that we had to fold into it. And then we had so many people that they had to subcontract out 3 or 4 vehicles from icerovers.is. And they basically do the same thing. They just had some extra vehicles for us, thank goodness. And they didn't, gouge us for them, which was great. So, this is planning, is key in trips like this. I mean, it's like executing a military operation. And, I knew this was going to happen, and I'm glad that I started a year in advance. And I was very surprised at how little problems we had. It was, to me, and you can ask Tony, I think it went almost flawlessly. We didn't have any, we were waiting for people. I think the biggest, what would you call it? Biggest disruption was every time we would stop for like a 5-minute photo op, all these folks would bring out their drones and they start getting some great videos. So now we had now Tony's over there doing air traffic control for me, and but not to knock them, because folks want to get some good video and they want to capture the moment. I just think that we had to have in the future. I will just ask the guides, pick 2 or 3 spots are going to be like drone footage spots, but the rest we just got to keep going, because we had a long day ahead of us.
That sounds like how I lead my trips.
Yeah.
An example of the drone nightmare was we were driving the Black Sand Beach, and you've got 11 white defenders, and everybody's got a DJI drone. So we're moving on. So people are looking up and locating their drone. Okay, there's my drone. I've got it in follow me mode. We're good to go. Only to realize the guy who looked up and saw the drone didn't see his DJI drone. He saw somebody else's, and his is still 10 miles behind him, parked in the sand. So
yes,
so
that happened.
Am I going to leave $1,100 parked back there in the sand waiting for somebody? Am I going to turn around and go back and get it? So we had that happen where we had to split the group up so somebody could go back and recover their drone. So
yeah. So to answer Rick Snodgrass's question, how many rigs? We had 10 rigs total with the 2 guide rigs, so 8 vehicles for the guests, and it was actually very manageable, I think. What do you think, Tony? I mean,
I don't think anybody felt cheated about their drive time. I think everybody that wanted to drive and wanted to experience, like Dan said, I think 30 is short when he says 30 river crossings. We probably had more than that, but anybody wanted to drive through water, they got to drive through water. In fact, our deepest crossing was going to and from the volcano huts, because they were right at the base of the glacier. And on the first day we went, the water was at its highest because it was a sunny day. So the melt off the glacier was high, so the water level was high. And we ended up having to leave 3 vehicles behind because they were part of the loaner vehicles we got from another company, and the insurance wasn't going to cover them doing that deep wading. So we had
they had smaller tires on them. They had like 33-inch tires,
I think.
36, and so it's just, they just had to make a safety call and say, okay, you guys in these vehicles double up with this couple of these vehicles over here, and we're just going to take you across the river, and we'll park at the volcano huts, and then tomorrow we'll come back and you get back in your vehicle and see if the water goes down. It was probably up to the door handle in some spots.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a good learning experience, though. You think of all the places that people go driving off-road, and what's the first thing you say, right after, hey, Bubba, watch this? It's usually, fuck back, fasten your seatbelts wherever else. And then, but here we were saying, hey, Bubba, watch this. And oh, by the way, unbuckle your seatbelts. And I was like, excuse me? But when you think it through, it's like, if that thing starts floating, you want to be able to bail as quick as you can.
Yeah.
So the other neat thing about the water crossing was, my thought always was, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So I'm going to try to get across that water in the shortest line I can find. No, not what they did with us. They had us drive 30, 40 yards with the current downstream until you got to a shallow where you could make that right turn and come out of it.
Yeah.
And when you saw it, it made perfect sense, but I'd have never come up with that on my own.
Yeah.
Never. So aside from just the absolute fun of it, the amount of learning that happened, because I've been driving that way for 5 years in the United States. I've never had the water crossing opportunities that we had in the 2.5 days. And so just the amount of skill or knowledge that I picked up just from being the exposure. Yeah. Super neat again. And I thought that alone justified $550 a day. You couldn't, I don't know where you could have go and paid that for a lesson in the US and got that.
That's a good point, Tony. I didn't think about it that way, but you're right. I mean, it was, a little bit of, well, not only for, that part for us, but the other folks that, number one, haven't driven a Defender before, haven't driven a manual transmission before, haven't driven on 38s before, and then having to go across a river multiple times during the day was, to me, like you said, that was an added bonus to having the vehicle itself.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, Ben, you want to roll some photos? And
Yeah.
So we'll start with this one. And basically, I went around and tagged all the vehicles with our decal. So we had the Northwest Overland member decal, but I also had a campaign decal made for this trip. So everybody got that in a little swag bag. They got 2 Velcro patches with that, 2 large stickers like that. And then they got these really fancy laser engraved coasters that we had one of our members put together for us.
Here, show that again.
Yep. Yeah. So there's that guy there. There we go. So you got 2 of these plexiglass laser engraved, and one of the attendees has a laser box, and he made a bunch of these for us. And so it's just a nice little keepsake. And then everybody got a campaign badge, so they felt important. And there's mine. So we had these made through Zazzle. So everybody got their own little moniker put on there. And I think that made them, I think it was kind of a fun thing, because now they have something they can look back on and go, oh, man, that was such a great trip.
Nice little keepsake.
Anyway, yeah. So this is our, we just hit the trail and we just finished airing down. And then now we're doing about 30, 40 miles of this for the rest of the day. And right now I'd say it's about midday and we got off of the power line road. This power line road goes east or west to east. We were driving for probably half of the country, and then it splits off into different branches. And this is the actual video of driving. It's very lunar Martian landscape. If you look over to the right, it's typically under snow most of the year, but this is also a gigantic lava field. And so you'll see some blowouts going on, like lava blowouts from years and years ago, over to the right as we're driving. And this is in
is that sand, or is that like dusty silt?
It's sand. It's like weathered lava rock that has just been crushed and ground down by snow and ice and wind and rain and everything. And it just, if you look at some of the pictures from the Mars rover mission, it's the same kind of deal where it just spent a lot of time underneath the elements and just turned into this like powder, if you will.
Mm.
Yeah. But it is heavy, because as you got 10 vehicles going down the road, we're not leaving any rooster tails. You're not seeing these clouds of dust.
Oh, interesting.
So it does not stay airborne long.
No, not at all. That was probably the best part of these off-road trails, is they weren't, they were just fine sand, but it wouldn't kick up very much, and then it would just settle like really fast. It was kind of heavy, like Tony said.
Dan and I did a Moab trip in May where we drove right next to the Colorado and the Green River, and that dried silt from when the river receded was like talcum powder. If a vehicle went through, you guaranteed the follow vehicle was going to be at least 100 yards behind, because the powder just stayed in the air that long. You couldn't see anything. This was the exact opposite of that.
Super heavy.
So it's going to answer Eric's question about obsidian. We didn't come across any obsidian fields that I remember, Tony, unless I missed something, but it was mostly...
it was not pointed out to me.
Yeah, me either. So, and then Rick, these were Pumas for sure. Yeah, these are Puma Defenders, TD5s, 6-speed manuals, and they were badass.
I thought he misspelled pumice.
Pumice.
I thought he was asking if there's pumice out there.
Yeah. So this picture here, we stopped. We're right at the closest point of the glacier, which I did not get a very good picture of, sadly. but you can see the difference between the rental vehicle and the like the subcontracted vehicle in the front that has like teeny tiny little wheels, and then our vehicle that has the big 38s on it. So the vehicle on the left was not allowed to cross the river at high flow. So we would take whoever was in that vehicle, take all their luggage and pile it into one of the bigger trucks. Tony, you can do this one. This is your video.
Yeah, this to me was the beauty of this was we had gone maybe 10 or 15 miles where every direction you looked, it was just jet black, like you knew that the volcano was, controlling the environment. And then all of a sudden Mother Nature goes, and here I am, because it just turned green out of nowhere. And it was just the contrast was unbelievable. This is again where I was mentioning where people, when you showed your photos, people challenged you, like, is the color off? Is there something, because they just
you ran it through a filter.
You couldn't grasp the contrast, but it was and that was not even in full sunlight. You can see that it's mostly an overcast sky, so you're not that green gets even more vibrant when the sun's out. So yeah, it was just unbelievable.
This particular picture here was, everything underneath us is just it's all volcanic rock and just fallout from the volcanoes over hundreds of decades, and then moss grows on top of it, and the moss is typically about 8 to 12 inches thick, so it's like serious moss, right? This particular picture was us crossing this river right before the waterfall, which was this was one of those like postcard moments, just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And to the volcano, as far as the volcano that caused all this, if you remember in 2010, they had the big eruption in Iceland that shut down all the North Atlantic air traffic. And the volcano was named E15 because it was 16 letters. And this is the wasteland that was created by that volcano. This is a volcano that we're circling around on the west side of that one glacier.
Yeah.
This is where we're driving at.
Yeah. I was going to say that for people who are listening to this podcast, if you get a chance to just go to our YouTube at some point, since you've already listened to it, just skip forward to the hour and 10-minute or whatever mark wherever we started these pictures and videos, and just watch this portion. You'll be absolutely flabbergasted by the colors and the scenery and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
It was very surreal for sure.
So was the moss thick enough to like lay on and be like a mattress?
Yes. Yeah, totally.
It'd have been comfortable. It'd have been comfortable. You could have camped on it easily. But here's an image, the picture you're showing now, of just all the waste. Look, you don't see hardly any color anywhere. It's just, and it just goes and goes and goes for that. In the distance, you can see the glacier in the background.
Yeah, so we got the ice cap in the background, and then everything that's below us is all either volcanic fallout or just like basalt rock that had been ground into this fine sand over just like hundreds of thousands of years of just glacial grinding. And then as the glacier started to recede, what you have left is just this field of like this black beach, but it's not really beach. We're kind of driving in a big, huge delta right now, on the east side of the ice cap. And this is not the biggest ice cap in Iceland. This is probably like the second. No, probably like the third or fourth. It's small, and I got a picture of it from the air, and it's actually, if you look how small we are, it's big. So yeah, but it was fun going through these, like splashing through these little mud puddles and stuff, and all the defenders had snorkels on them for good reason, obviously, and because we're coming out of summer, so it's not as prolific as it probably would be in the spring. But yeah,
and
in fact,
the soil underneath the water, it's all firm. There was never the situation where somebody got bogged down in mud. That's firm bottom. Even though it was just all that crushed rock, it's not like mud or anything like that at all.
Yeah. And it's very abrasive too, as you could probably guess.
Sorry. I keep adding the video and it's adding the sound as well.
Where your arrow is in this, or that red section of road in the picture, is that about where the volcano huts were?
Yeah, where the arrow is where the volcano huts. That's where we started on day 2. And so the red part is where we had to backtrack in order to get back on the big ring road that goes around the two ice caps. So the big ice cap on the right is the one we circumnavigated. We wound up on a city, a little city called Vic at the very bottom. And then we took the beach for about 15 or so miles along the coastline there, where it says number 1. But lots of switchbacks and a lot of altitude gain. Now, altitude gain is relative in Iceland compared to the Northwest. I think that the highest we got in elevation was about 1,800 feet.
Oh, that's not very high at all.
Not at all, right? So even though it looks very, looks like the mountains are very tall and whatnot, they're actually very low in elevation. I think the highest point in Iceland is 6,000 feet. Is that right, Tony? I don't remember what they said.
Yeah, it wasn't a high. Yeah. It's barely a mile.
Yeah, barely a mile up. This was the last day and our last sort of like big hill climb out of these this big delta area where these many rivers we crossed. And so that's the whole crew there. You don't see our guides in there because they're taking the pictures, but then the next picture you'll see the whole crew. We put together a flag. I brought an Iceland flag with me, and then everybody signed the flag, and now they got it hanging up in their office as a big thank you for just. I don't think they were expecting that, honestly, and they were just super honored that we even thought about doing that for them. Yeah, it was very cool. I would say that I got an email from the organizing service, the vehicle service, when I got back home, and they just were elated that we had a great time, and they really want to entertain us to do this again because it was such a great group of people. So, and I think they really appreciated the fact that we started planning a lot far in advance, than showing up a week ahead of time going, hey, I'm going on a trip for, with 30 people. Yeah.
You mean you didn't plan a week in advance and just say, okay, yeah, I've got 30 people showing up. You need to be ready for it.
Yeah. So American of me. Tony can set this one up.
So you remember we talked about some of the vehicles could not make the crossing because the size of the tires. So the first night we left 3 vehicles on the opposite side of the river that our lodging was. So this is the second morning, the first morning leaving the lodging, and we're going back to the vehicles parked on the other side. So obviously we're going to have more people than we actually have seats in the cab. So here's one of the crossings. And again, this is something different, something that I learned that I never would have thought of. As you'll watch him, he's going to drive downstream. He's not taking the straight line across. And it takes so much of the resistance or the current force away when you do that. And he gets to the point where 2/3 of the tire out of the water, he shallows out, he makes his turn and goes back to where it is. So my pre-trip logic, I'd have never come up with that on my own. So just the experience and just the knowledge you gained being there and was a blast. But so now we're getting people back, and I'm not sure if we're going to have audio. There'll be a moment where some of the ladies come up with a plan to address the seating shortage. And so if you've got audio, I'd let it play because it'll come up here pretty quick. The guy standing in the window is our guide. That's one of our 2 guides. He's telling everybody to get to low and second gear, and that's the gear you take going across the river. And with the Defenders and their transmission, you don't have to do the gas. You put it in low, it'll just idle across, and it'll do just fine. Yeah. So we've got this crossing, and then the vehicle that follows is where it gets colorful. If you can hear the lady talking now, that's critical commentary.
Stop him! Stop him! Dan, stop! She's gonna ride on your roof rack.
Holy shit! Are you doing it? Fuck, dude! Hold on.
There goes Michelle.
What? We get on the roof?
All the ladies up on top.
Watch us all run!
Get up on the
So the
wing.
audio is about 15 seconds ahead of the video.
Yeah.
At least 15 seconds ahead.
Hang on, no. Michelle. Jerry, hold this.
Yeah, it is. It's legged out. Sorry.
Yeah, so the vehicle right there with the roof rack is the one they're going to climb up on.
It's recording. That's why I was wanting you to hold it. I didn't see anything on the
And there they go.
Here we go. All right.
So, our friend Brady, who's like watching the podcast right now, he's the one driving, and I'm driving shotgun. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have, there's a lot of estrogen upstairs right now. But it was fun.
It's out right there.
So there'll be a follow-up video that'll actually show the crossing. But the ladies were great. They had absolutely no fear. They drove any situation, anywhere. What I thought one of the amazing things, I don't know if Dan did it by choice or it's just by chance, 28 people with a bunch of different expectations, short of me getting a little snippy with somebody telling me my headlights weren't on. I don't think we had any tension whatsoever in the group for the entire 3 days in the vehicles. None. So, yeah.
Yeah, we paired people up pretty well, I think. You know, and honestly, it was just a process of elimination because some couples came with friends of theirs, and which was great. That actually made it a lot easier. But all the leftovers, like even Brady and Sonny and
Did you
myself.
give them the follow video, or let's see?
No, I didn't. I'll send it to you guys. I'm trying to keep it off the internet because it probably wasn't a smart thing to do, liability wise.
I suppose, yeah.
I'll send it to you guys. But it's a riot. There's an aerial footage of it as well.
Here's aerial.
I don't know if you remember me mentioning earlier when I was talking about the accents of our guides. So this is one of the neat crossings that we did. I thoroughly enjoyed this one because it was just super picturesque.
It is very, you just want to go there.
Yeah, you do. Definitely put it on your list. It's and we just scratched the surface of it. Not even that. It was where these guys took us. They don't normally take people. It's just what we asked them to do. We said we want it rough. We want it remote. We don't want any they don't need like a hot dog stand along the way or anything like that. We just want to get in the backcountry and really see the rawness of Iceland, and that's really pretty much what they did.
I'll eat my hot dogs raw. That type of attitude.
Well, you have to get hot dogs in town. They got a great hot dog stand in Reykjavik.
Mm.
Yeah.
So we did learn about a few traditions, Icelandic traditions while they're there, of which in September they're doing the roundup for the sheep. And so on at least 2 occasions, we passed several of the pens where all the farmers or the sheep herders, whatever you want to call them, were separating their sheep. And if you're, I'd say, under 5'10", you probably don't want to go watch one of those events because they have this strange custom where they find the smallest sheep owner and they beat him up until he can't stand anymore. Then they buy him a beer and it's good. So
Oh my.
if one of the locals invites you to the sheep roundup, make sure you're not the smallest guy. because
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
obviously
boy.
going to be the target.
So
Yep,
bring
send
them in.
Send your tall friend.
Yeah, he
Wow.
can tell you the story, but they were telling us that story, and I was going like, and you guys are still friends? You go, yeah, do it every year.
Right?
I don't think
We
so.
do it every year.
Yeah, do it every year.
Yeah.
This is still in the same eastern part of the ice cap, and we're obviously letting these cyclists go by, but we're coming up to another river crossing that I mean, they're just they're intermittent. They show up and then you deal with it, and then you know.
So were these guys like dual sports, or were they just like locals out riding around on their dirt bikes?
It's probably a combination of the both, honestly, dude. It's you can rent a dual sport bike over there and take it cross country. I would suspect that these guys are probably, tourists that just rented a enduro and just, went out and had some fun with their buddies.
From what I remembered, most of them were the dual sports. The ones I would say were closer to the locals were the guys that we saw on the Razors, because you didn't see many of those.
No,
and so
not
it
at all.
didn't seem like they were rentals. It seemed like those were the people that were the locals, the ones that were, because we may have passed a total of 4 in all the miles that we drove off road, maybe, and one guy in a quad. Other than that, it was all vehicles.
He must have been a peasant, considering it's a quad and a side by side nowadays.
Well,
No,
it's funny too. We got to a river crossing
because it was too deep.
Crossing. Yeah. So guy had a son with him. He had to turn around and go back with the way he came, which I don't know what that looked like, because we were already sort of on the tail end of our trip. And so if he was out there and he came the same route we did, that was a pretty gnarly ride back. But I'm sure he found a place to cross over. Yeah, so this I took this picture on. So we did our overlanding trip was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We got back to the facility on Tuesday, said our goodbyes, and this was Wednesday night, the 14th, and I was zipping around town. I got myself one of those little rechargeable scooters, rented one, and started going down to the waterfront. I noticed all these people congregating down on the waterfront. I'm like, what the heck's going on? Some kind of parade or something? And then when I got down there, everybody's looking straight up, and I'm like, there it was. So this picture was run through a filter just to give it some more brilliance, but that gives you an idea. That whole night was just straight up Northern Lights. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And I didn't take a video, which I didn't even think about doing, but the video really shows you how the positive charged, magnetic, whatever it is, electrons, how they dance in the sky. It's really unbelievable.
This was part of the reason why I was pushing Dan to do September, because if we had done this in June or July, we'd have had too much daylight. We wouldn't have been able to see that. And that was my 4th trip to Iceland, and I've tried to see the Northern Lights every time, and that was my first time being able to see it. And when you go, there's 2 things that'll help you. There are apps that will tell you the probability of the Northern Lights. They use a scale of 1 to 9, 9 being the highest probability, obviously 1 being the least. So the night that Dan photographed, and the same night I got my photos, it was only a 2. And what influences that 1 to 9 is solar activity from our sun. So if you're not getting the flares and anything of that nature and stuff, then your odds are low. But yeah, we had a phenomenal show when the predictor said, you got a 2 on a scale of 1 to 9. That's what your odds are getting a good show was. So yeah.
I wonder what a 9 looks like.
Oh
yeah, that
ridiculous.
was a 2.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. And it didn't last long. I think it was only like an hour or so. It just and the reason why they congregate over Iceland is because that's where magnetic north is, and that's where all these charged particles wind up in our atmosphere. So that's why in like Northern Europe, Iceland, Greenland, that's where the big masses of them are going to usually pop up.
And Rick made a good point in his commentary there. Dan's pictures are from smack dab in the middle of town. So you can't have any more light pollution than you did, and it still turned out to be that good. Where
Yeah.
the light pollution becomes a factor is sometimes it's not directly overhead where you are. It's to the north or whatever the direction you're looking. And then it's instead of being overhead, it's on the horizon. And then light pollution becomes more of a factor there. You'll see lights in the hills sitting at distance and stuff, and then it competes with that light. But when it's directly overhead, doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah,
it's going to show.
And to answer Eric's question about villages, the only time we stopped at any towns were really to gas up. There wasn't too many villages or towns on our travels. It was basically on like either we were completely off road or we were taking tarmac back to the rental facility and running through roundabouts. So as far as like little towns where we were at, there wasn't very many, honestly. You'd have to go north of Reykjavik or start heading around on the ring road, counterclockwise to the east and then up north, and you'll start running into some of these smaller towns. But I mean, I think people are sort of used to the white Defenders driving around because they've been there for a long time. But the group our size, I mean, definitely, I think one of our biggest challenges was like people like to pass a lot, and the highways in Iceland are probably about 6 feet narrower than ours are in the US for like a two-way highway. So that was interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So we got these big fat Defenders. Yeah. No shoulders at all. But anyway, yeah, that was pretty dodgy, and especially when it was windy out. So this picture here,
you need to make a public service announcement about the gas stations, if you would.
Oh yeah, I told you guys that we had a little story about Nathan Poplowski. Not to name any names, but so in Iceland, and probably the rest of the world except North America, diesel and gas are next to each other, but diesel is black and gasoline is green.
Oh, dangerous.
So I probably don't need to say much more than that. And if Nathan's listening now, he's got to kick my ass. But and so it's a common mistake to the point where they actually put these metal flaps over the nozzle so you don't mess up. But some pumps don't have them. And Nate was the first guy at the pump, and so he's like, I'm just going to top it off and get out of the way so the rest of these people can get their gas filled or diesel filled up. Well, anyway, we get back to the volcano huts that night, and he's got this concerned look on his face, and he's like, hey, I may have screwed up back at the gas station. And I'm like, oh, what's up? Because I think I put gas in the diesel tank. I'm like, oh crap, that's a problem. So we conferred with our guides and some other folks, and the next morning we siphoned out his tank. We probably got an hour or so delay on our departure, but we siphoned his tank out and added some more diesel. Fortunately, it ran fine. He didn't have any problems with it, but I did send Nathan a little gift in the mail, and he should be getting it tomorrow or Wednesday. But he's got this beautiful travel mug now that reminds him that black is diesel.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, it's now going to be like a little bit of a joke, and we can all laugh at it now because there's nothing wrong with the truck. It ran great, but I was like, that was a memorable moment that we had to capture. And I also made him a T-shirt, so I sent that off today. So I hope he's not watching. It'd be a surprise for him. So, but yeah, that was the only like weird hiccup that we had. So anyway, getting back to this picture. So this is so Vision X has a dealer in Reykjavik, and the name of the company is called Drif, DRIF, and in Iceland it means drive, and so it's an off-road shop. And the guy on the right there, his name is Gisli, and he's one of the co-owners. This particular shop that we're at is called Highland Trucks, and they do custom builds of Dodge 3500 Rams for really rich people. And so this guy's getting a vehicle frame stretch, and he's getting Unimog portal axles stuffed underneath it. This is probably about a $350,000 conversion that's going on. So the guy that runs the shop has pretty much his revenue for a couple of few years. And it's him and his son only. And so they've been working on this truck now for about a year now. And it's not quite there yet, but they've done a lot of engineering on it and a lot of like modification to the frame. And this is just sort of a testament to some of the craftsmanship that these guys have over there. It's just unbelievable what they do with vehicles.
Yeah, it's what is it? It looks like is that 4-link with a air suspension?
Yep, 4-link air suspension, and it also has a reduction transfer case in front of the transfer case from a truck, from a lorry, semi-truck type of deal. So now it brings the drive rate or the gear ratio down another like 8-to-1 or something like that. So I mean, this thing is like going to be an absolute crawler. And here's the catcher. This is the best part. When this truck is done and it's riding on 58s, it's completely street legal.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can modify the bejesus out of these vehicles, and you can still drive them on the highway or in the city. As long as you can get around the roundabouts, they're completely legal. So, and there's Highland Trucks, and then that's one of their project Jimneys in there. They did a complete suspension and body lift on. They're putting a bunch of electrical stuff on it, lights and compressor and everything. They did a really clean job with it. In fact, they do their own fiberglass molds. So those fender flares that you see, that's all made in that shop there.
That's awesome.
It's really awesome.
It's like, hey, I'm going to keep it street legal, but here's some really cool fenders to go with it.
Yes. And they do have a website, highlandtrucks.is. And I would encourage everybody to go take a look at some of the fancy work that they've done, because it is pretty amazing. So they do low volume, high value projects, and just a parent shop. And there's me next to my 33.
Yeah, I swear you posted that picture and I was like, it's Dan next to 33s.
That is a 58-inch tire, and a 16.5-inch wide rim. It's a monster. And the deflated ones are over to the right there, obviously. So, but yeah, that's a big mamma jamma for sure.
Oh, that's got to be a heavy tire. That's for sure.
No doubt. Yeah. I think he's got a crane that actually hoists these things up into place.
Hey, Dan.
Yes, sir.
So did that truck also have the double valve stem system set up?
I didn't take a look at the rims to see if that was the case. And if it was, I don't think they had the air system set up in the vehicle yet, but I didn't look at the rim. I think it's going to have that auto inflate deflate system like the more expensive trucks have. It's like air up on the fly.
And you might explain that double valve stem system, because I've never seen it in North America.
So on our Defenders, they had their 15-inch diameter rims, and they were 16-inch wide, and they had two valve stems and there weren't bead locks or anything, but they had two valve stems machined into the steel rim, and one of the valves had all the guts taken out of it, so it was just air is being held in by just the O-ringed valve or stem cap, and the other one had the guts in it. So for quick deflation, you just take the cap off and it deflates like in a matter of like a minute, if that. But then when you go to air inflate, you hook the air up to the one that has the guts in it, and you stick your air nozzle, your air pressure gauge up to the one that doesn't have the guts in it, and it's a lot faster to air up, because you're getting real time. You don't have to keep checking. You just hook it up, and you'll see the gauge get higher and higher in PSI, and then you can stop. So it's a very interesting way that they've done it. It works great. Nobody lost any air. We were able to air down to I think it was what was it, 8 psi?
It
Something like
reminds that reminds me a lot of like Jeremy's got the power tank monster valves on his JK with his 1 tons, and he has dual valve systems, so he checks pressure from one while he's filling up from the other.
Yeah, so same principle. It's not anything high technology. It's just a better use of your time, I guess, when you're down at the wheel. Yeah, so that's that. This was a Hilux. So all the Hiluxes over there, they're basically all Toyota Land Cruisers, but what would be in the States like a GX 470 or 460 or something like that. They're basically the Lexus, but they call them the Hilux Land Cruisers, and they've got Hilux Land Cruiser with a straight 6 turbo diesel engine, and they're monsters. I mean, they're fun to drive. This was just one I saw in town. It's got the alu cab like conversion on the top of it.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful truck. Lots of Defenders in town, and everybody, of course, they drive on the right hand side of the road like North America does, which made it a lot easier for some of us to navigate in their left-hand drive vehicles. So
one warning on the traffic circles.
Yeah.
And the vehicle on the most inner lane has the right of way to exit whenever they want.
What?
Yeah.
That's
So
backwards.
you have to be vigilant when you're entering and exiting a roundabout, because if you don't keep your eye on the inside lane and you get in an accident, it's probably going to be your fault if you're on the outside lane.
The simple way to do it is just to mind the overlap. Don't overlap with anybody, because if you're overlapped, then you're at risk. So
Yep. The next day, our Vision X dealers took us on a little tour of some of their friends' project shops, and this is a YJ that this guy. I didn't put a lot of pictures of what he's doing here into this fold because it was just going to take forever to explain. But this guy basically has built a frame. He's converted the front end of this thing to independent suspension on front and rear, and for a good reason. There's some benefits to that in Iceland, but he actually cut out and welded all of the control arms out of flat plate steel. And I'll share some pictures of those with you guys after the fact if you want to share them down the line at another time. But this thing it's kind of a Franken Jeep at the moment, but it's, he's been working on it 4 years, and the guy's an engineer.
You can eat off those fenders. They're that big.
Oh my God, I know.
I think you could fly with those fenders.
If you could get it fast enough, I bet you could. This thing was still in pretty rough shape, but I can see what he's doing with it, and hopefully we'll get to see the finished product someday.
I love for our listeners that he's got a giant Warren sticker on the hood.
I know,
and it looks like some Vision X 7-inch up front.
Those 8.7 ADV series up front. Yeah, so a nice combination of American know-how.
And then again with the Jimny.
The birdie.
Yeah. Well, fabulous trip.
Had a really good time.
I want to pull up one picture here real quick and just ask this question. I'm looking at the disc rotors on this portal axle, and it looks like it's solid, no venting, no veins, no anything going on.
Yeah, I think it's just one big hunk of steel.
Yeah, it looks like it's like 1.25 inches thick or something.
It
is Unimog, so right.
Yeah, it was about at least 1 inch thick. But you got to think, those things don't go very fast, and when they break, hopefully they're compression braking or shifting down.
That's true. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it was good. It's good to share. And again, we're gonna put one together for next year as well. And we got some trips that are in the works too, international trips. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah.
I want to thank Tony for inspiring me to do this trip, and I'm just really happy that it came out. Like I think it just was a great life experience for a lot of folks. And that was actually one of the questions on the survey that I put out. I'm like, was this on your bucket list, or was this mediocre, or was this hands down one of the greatest trips you've ever been on? And that was pretty much the response. So I think we lucked out as a group, because with that many people, it could have got a little dodgy, but it didn't. So
Before the
Yeah.
first day was over, people were already saying next time, next time, next time. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many spots when he does it again, but he could probably sell it to the same 28 people and they'd all go back and do it all over again. As for me personally, the one thing that I wanted was we were in some beautifully remote places, and would have been neat to camp there. But that seems like that's not an industry the island is ready to capitalize on yet. So it'll be interesting to.
Yeah, that sounds like a hard one to. I know from Andy and Mercedes when they were on the show, they talked about trying to camp and all that, and it was mostly sleeping inside their chimney, from what I gathered, because they circumnavigated Iceland. Right? Was that right?
Yeah,
I don't recall.
Yeah,
it sounds about right. There is no dispersed camping in Iceland. The only time you can camp off-road is if there's snow on the ground. Anywhere is free to go dispersed camp or primitive camp if it's snowed. But if there's no snow, you have to stick to the roads and you have to camp in designated spots. So they're definitely not progressive that way, for probably good reason.
considering the problems we have here in the States,
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
Wrapping it up, where
I need to wrap it up.
can our listeners find you?
Your listeners can find us at northwestoverland.com. That's where we're going to have the next year's trips. But I'm working right now on creating a new entity, which will focus exclusively on the international stuff. But we'll keep Northwest Overland as a domestic overlanding trip forum and community. It's just I need to, for liability and tax purposes, I need to create a new LLC that will cater to that. So that will be probably coming out at the beginning of the year, and I'll make a big announcement. But everybody does this stuff. We all love it, love getting outdoors, and I guess it really doesn't matter who you do it with, as long as you like the people you're going with, and I think that we've created a great community. It's been fun hanging out with you guys for the past few years, and I appreciate you getting us on the show. And yeah, I mean, it's a very small world, and people should embrace the idea of getting out of their comfort zone and doing something that they've never done before. And I think the thing that really motivated me was my time in the Navy, when we just kind of went places, and I just wound up in a city somewhere and I didn't know anybody. And it's like, you have this now wanderlust. You want to just go see what's around the corner, and I think that's what got me into this whole thing, is just the love of adventure and exploration. So
Absolutely.
and meeting great people.
Next up, Ben going to Canada.
Excellent.
I'm international now.
Dan, if you would cover, you guys did some research, because there were numerous people that talked about spending a summer there. So you did a little bit of research, a little information gathering on cost for that to happen, to get a vehicle from North America to Iceland, and then what if any restrictions there were for imports.
I mean, obviously you got to get a carnet, which is basically a passport for your vehicle. The research that I did, and there's probably better resources, I just started scratching the surface, but some of the quotes I got back were about $3,500 each way for shipping it. So you definitely want to plan ahead, and you want to stay there for quite a while to maximize your expense of shipping your vehicle over. It will have to be inspected, like anything. Insurance, licensing, all that stuff. So all the obvious things, and that could be a whole topic of discussion, because now that a lot of people that went on this trip have this whole itch to get their own vehicle over and do an off-roading trip in the wintertime, because you're pretty much limitless on where you can go. As long as there's snow on the ground, you can go wherever the heck you want to. In fact, you can even camp on private property without having to get the landowner's permission, as long as there's snow on the ground.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So anyway, there's a lot to learn about the country, but I would say that, the folks there were really super cool and very friendly and not as cold as Norwegians. No knock on Norwegians, but I was surprised. And Reykjavik itself it's such a great town. I mean, there's so many things to do, so many museums and pubs and live music, and gosh, it's just crazy how much we didn't see.
Did you go to that hot spring? That's like that famous one with the gray mud.
I didn't go, but we had a lot of folks that went to the Blue Lagoon. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about that, and they're like, it is actually as photogenic as you see in the pictures.
Yeah. That's what
Eric says Eric says that you can camp on people's property without their permission in Tacoma also.
Oh, sweet.
That is no joke. You're speaking the truth. So
yeah.
Anyway, I got to roll.
We appreciate you having you guys on. Thanks for joining us for our show, and I can't wait to find out when your next one is. I probably can't make it for 2023, but maybe 2024.
Yep, for sure. We got some of these trips that are a little bit further out will probably require a little bit more planning in advance, because just the cost can be prohibitive just to get there. Mm-hmm. And then we have, the whole trip to do, on land. So, but I'll be in contact with you guys, and if something pops up, I'll let you know about it.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Also, we want to thank everybody who listens to us weekly, and also all those people who stayed for almost 2 hours for this show. We appreciate all the comments and the back and forth between you guys. Make sure you're sharing us with your friends so they can hear about how awesome Iceland is too. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for helping us grow, and God bless America.
All right.
Don't forget to visit Patriot Patch and join the Patch of the Month Club. Check out our Gaia affiliate link for up to 40% off. Also, don't forget to head over to Warren, Medical Gear Outfitters, and Colby Valve to see all their great gear. We're a proud part of the Firearms Radio Network. Got a comment or question? Send it to us through our webpage at firearmsradio.net or through our social media channels by searching for Offroad Podcast. Also, you can listen to us live at overlandradio.com Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. When off-road, please remember to have fun, tread lightly, be safe, and courteous. Thanks for listening.
I'm going to have a shirt made that says IR Scientist.